The Prosperity update for Space Engineers 1 is here, and whilst it's not an update that adds lots of new blocks and features like the economy updates and the warfare updates of the past, it does include a variety of improvements to the game that we'll be checking out today. Alongside this update, there was the Prosperity Pack, which is a DLC including several cosmetic blocks, and there will be a giveaway for this DLC later in the video, so stay tuned for that. To start with, one of the major features of this update is a new global encounter, with global encounters being the Endgame Encounters that were added to Space Engineers 1 in the Contact update a couple of years ago. This new encounter is called the Factorum Drone Base, and it's a facility with several stations around it, and those stations will repeatedly spawn drones that you'll have to fight. So initially, in order to complete the encounter, you have to take out the stations, and then take out the remaining drones. Once you've done that, you'll find that there's a safe zone protecting the facility, so you'll need to work out a way to disable the safe zone, and that can be done by entering a small hangar at the back of the base, which has this key in it here, which then you need to move from this facility to the front door of the safe zone area, and once you've installed it, the safe zone will go down, allowing you to take what's inside. Now what's inside depends on what variant of this you find, with one of them having two small grid Prototech batteries, a Prototech jump drive on this fighter here, and then the Prototech fusion reactor, which is found in the room at the back, and then the second variant has two small grid Prototech gyroscopes, a single Prototech battery, and then the brand new block, the Prototech O2 H2 generator. As you can imagine, the Prototech O2 H2 generator generates hydrogen and oxygen, generating 10 times the amount of hydrogen and oxygen that the normal O2 H2 generator does in 1 minute. It's also around 40% more efficient in its ice usage, so it uses less ice in order to create more oxygen and hydrogen at also a faster speed, and additionally on top of that, the energy usage is half that of the normal O2 H2 generator, making it an all-around upgrade over the base version. The O2 H2 generator isn't the only new block in this update though. We also have a new block, the Flat Collector, which is a small grid block, which is much thinner than the normal collector for small grids, whilst having different types of connections. I believe the idea behind this is to give you a collector that is easy to use on small grid in order to harvest crops and stuff like that, but I'm sure players will find many innovative new ways to use this block. In the last update, they added this block here, the Structural Platform Connector, and this block became very useful for players' builds because it was a large block that was conveyored on all sides, so it allowed you to very quickly set up a new base and get it conveyored up very quickly, which was obviously not the intended purpose of it, the intended purpose being the connector on the middle. So they've added a block for this purpose, which you can see here, which is the Structural Platform Conveyor, which is pretty much exactly the same as the connector variant, except number one, obviously it doesn't have the connector on top. Number two, being a connector, the connector one has a small amount of inventory, which the conveyor version does not. However, the plus side is, as you can see, the Structural Platform Conveyor only uses 10 PCU, but the connector variant uses 125 PCU. So the Structural Platform Conveyor is a much more efficient use of your resources and also your performance, allowing you very quickly to set up new bases that are all conveyored up. There is a new variant of the stairs in this update called the short stairs, which as you can see are very similar to the normal stairs we currently have, but they are only 1 by 1 by 1, whereas the stairs we currently have are 1 by 2 by 1. Now we do currently have stairs that do this 1 by 1 ramp, but that brings us on to the second advantage of this block, which as you can see is that it's sealed on all sides, which means it is airtight, something I know players have been asking for a very long time. And the last new block in this update before we start talking about quality of life features is the Passage 2 frame, which is obviously a block designed to fit with the current passages we have, just being half block in width instead. And with all the half blocks we've been getting recently, this is a welcome addition to the game. You can see it's being used on this global encounter here to fit in with other half blocks in order to create this much more narrow looking corridor. Right, with the new encounter and the new blocks out of the way, let's talk about the numerous quality of life features in this update. To start with, if you start a new world and you select the option for Space Pod, you will see that there is a brand new Space Pod to start out with. So if I respawn, you'll see our lovely new Space Pod here. One of the things you'll immediately notice is that this new space pod is hydrogen powered as opposed to ion powered like the previous space pod. This means that this space pod can be used on both planets and in space, which might sound like an upgrade, but you do also need to find ice. Hydrogen thrusters are a lot cheaper than ion thrusters as well, so this makes it both easier to upgrade your starting pod and also is a nerf to the starting pod as you can no longer salvage it for lots of materials that you can sell at the market. Overall, I do think this is a good change. One of the things I especially like is that two of the thrusters aren't welded up, so this adds a little bit of tutorialization to the starting ship, which as I've mentioned many times in the past, tutorialization of Space Engineers is one of my big passions. So overall, I think this is a very positive change, just like the replacement of the starting pod for the starting rover in one of the previous updates. And like the new starting rover, you also start with a couple of materials to get you started as opposed to forcing you to mine stone immediately. Now, I know it's only been 30 seconds since I got my new starting ship, but I appear to have lost it. But luckily for me, there is a new feature in this update that allows you to find missing grids. If you open up your terminal and go to info, you can see I have my respawn ship on the side, and if I press ping, it creates me a new GPS at the location of that ship. And I can see, oh, my respawn ship, oh, it's just on the other side of this asteroid, of course it is. So I can fly there and get back to my ship. Easy. Now, this GPS is only where your ship was. If your ship is moving, obviously it will not track it. However, of course, if you move your ship, you can always go back to info and reping it, which creates a brand new GPS at that location. Now, one of the main things that's got quality of life improvements in this update is the economy system, which has received a number of improvements. To start with, there have been a bunch of adjustments and improvements to contracts, and additionally they've added better mod support to contracts as well. They've added improvements to NPC characters on stations. As you can see, the NPCs now use different skins, so you can see this guy down here has the Xbox skin on. You can see that this female engineer down here has just jumped outside the station. What? I've never seen that before. You can see that these two have white stripes on their suits and stuff like that. One of my favorite examples of this, and it's a shame I wasn't recording at the time, is I came onto a station, I was looking for these NPCs, and then I turned around and literally there was one behind me with the wood skin on painted in yellow, and that skin with that color just looks spooky as hell, especially as the NPC was like 2 centimeters behind me. Freaked me out. And then to top it off, the NPC then looked off to the side and pointed, and it pointed at a desk, and I'm like, okay, that's ominous. So I looked inside the desk, and you'll never guess what was in the desk. Hello. Lore. And I do love lore. This is another change in this update. If you look around on the various containers on these stations, you have a chance to find data pads with lore on them. When the patch notes said that data pads could be found on economy stations, I thought that meant they were selling them, so I was looking around, and then as I said, that spooky ass NPC appeared behind me and pointed to exactly where one was. So either my game is haunted, or this NPC was my guardian angel who had come to gift me lore about space engineers. And if you are like me, I would like to know the secret lore of Space Engineers. Yes, Space Engineers has lore, and a lot of it. It has a complete timeline of events from 2029 to 2084. So if you want to find out all that secret lore, that will be the next video on my channel after this one. So don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel to see that. And if you don't want that, if you're more interested in, oh, I don't know, 100 Days in Space Engineers, when I hit 100k, I will be doing exactly that. So yet another reason for you to subscribe. The Services Terminal, which was added in the last update, has received a number of quality of life features. For starters, it has a lot of UI improvements. You can switch between pages at the bottom and you can see your account balance and your current PCU. And they've made a bunch of changes to all of the different interfaces of this block. For example, you can see there's a new option for irreparable blocks. So this is if you have blocks on your ship, like Prototech blocks, for example, that can't be repaired by the Services Terminal. And there's a number of other additions like this to the Services Terminal UI that give you more information. Additionally, if you have retrieval timers turned on, they've made several changes to how retrieval timers are calculated, with them overall being reduced so it doesn't take as long to retrieve a larger ship. And additionally, they've added several other changes to retrieving and storing grids. So if I retrieve my hauler here, retrieve from storage, you can see that it's over there in front of me. So if I shoot it with a rocket and now go back to my storage services, go to active grids, you can see that it will be ready to store in 56 seconds, 55, 54, as this grid was recently changed, adding a delay before it could be stored. The idea behind this is to patch a sort of exploit, where what players would do is they have a services terminal on a second smaller grid that they would then store their main grid inside of it, and then it didn't matter what happened to that small grid, as the larger grid would still exist, just inside the services terminal network, so you could just go somewhere else and retrieve your main ship. Now there's 60 seconds after taking damage or making a change to the grid that prevents you from storing it, resolving those exploits. To add to this, you can see I've got my miner going above my head here. If I go to the services terminal and go to active grids, you can see that I am unable to store my miner as it's currently moving. But now it's no longer moving. I go back to my services terminal, go to active grids, and you can see it's immediately ready to store. So now grids that are moving over 5 meters per second can no longer be stored, presumably preventing more exploits. The final super useful feature I'd like to mention about the services terminal is the change in precision mode, which if you go to the services terminal, you can activate precision mode down here, which you can see generates this white square on the ground, and this white square is where grids from the services terminal are placed. Previously you had to move it around with these sliders here, and whilst in this instance it's super easy as I just need to bring it over to me, in some instances it is very annoying to have to move it around, but there is a new option at the bottom called use player position, which immediately places the square down where I'm stood. So if I go back to the services terminal now, and if I retrieve the Neo Zero Cycle, it immediately places it where the square was, making it much simpler to set up the services terminal than before. Absolutely amazing quality of life feature. The patch note said that the laser antenna had UX improvements, and I was like, oh, I've never used a laser antenna before. How am I going to know what was different? It's actually super easy. They've added a control panel to the front, so you can configure the settings of the block without needing to go to another interface. That's actually way simpler than I thought it was going to be, and maybe I should probably learn how the laser antenna actually works. And speaking of improvements that I thought were going to be more complicated than they actually were, the patch notes also said that they've added wheel indicators for better build orientation. And I was like, oh, well, I really struggled to see which way wheel suspensions are currently. This is going to be super complicated for me to work out what they've changed. It's actually super simple. They've added an arrow at the top, and then they've written the word down at the bottom. And you can see on the normal variant, again, they've got an arrow at the top and the word down at the bottom, which is a super simple change, but it make a massive difference, especially for people like me who are stupid and can't memorize which way the wheel suspensions are. Especially for this design. Like, before they added up and down on it, how was I supposed to remember which way was up on this, guys? Come on. And the best part about it is, if there's a wheel there, you can't even see those indicators, so it doesn't ruin the aesthetics of your build. They made a couple of improvements to the projector block. One is that the option to keep projections on down here can now be toggled at any time, whereas previously I believe it could only be toggled when the projection was currently active. Potentially there was a couple of other niche times where it could and couldn't be toggled. And additionally, they've made changes to the way sliders work on the projectors. I don't believe it affects the offset sliders, the ones that move around your ship. I believe it specifically affects the rotation ones. Now, I believe the way this works, as far as I understand, is previously, if you rotated the ship in one direction, it would change the direction of all of the rotations, so they would all be different. But now, regardless of which way I rotate this, if I change the pitch to face forward, it will always rotate me on the same axis. And now if I place to the side, you can see moving yaw is rotating me around left and right. And that should hopefully make it much easier to position your projections in the future, as opposed to what I normally do, which is just flick around all the sliders until eventually it's in the right place. With the addition of a Prototech O2 H2 generator, both it and the normal H2 O2 generators have got improvements, specifically with this option down here, with the option for it to automatically pull bottles, which will grab empty bottles on your conveyor system, pull them into this block, and refill them automatically for you. Whereas before, without a sorter, you'd have to manually drag the bottles into the inventory. Speaking of bottles though, if I open up my inventory, you can see I have 3 empty hydrogen bottles and 3 empty oxygen bottles. And now if I go over to the refill station and hold F on it to fill up my hydrogen and oxygen, you'll see in the bottom left that my bottles are filling up as well. And if I come back to my inventory, I have 3 full hydrogen bottles and 3 full oxygen bottles. So, as you just saw, filling up your oxygen and hydrogen from a survival kit, a refill station, or the med bay will now automatically fill your bottles as well. Something that was previously a mod, but it is a very, very welcome base game addition. If you create a new world and customize it, the default options have been changed. Now by default, scrap drops have been turned off, which I'm going to be honest, I think is one of those weird legacy features of Space Engineers 1 that doesn't really fit with the modern game. And additionally, tool shake has been turned off by default, so your whole screen no longer shakes as you use drills and grinders. This isn't the only changes to tools in this update though. As for the welder and grinder, they have made changes to the lighting effects of them, making the lighting from them softer and lowering the flash intensity. Hopefully you can see in these 2 examples here, that whilst they still create the flashing lights, they are no longer as big and as bright as before. Personally for me, I always found this lighting thing really ugly, especially for watching videos, it just doesn't look good. But I imagine this is probably an accessibility feature, as I imagine flashes like this aren't good for photosensitive people. Also, very importantly, they've reduced the volume of tools in this update a little bit. And yes, finally, after 10,000 years, I'm free. No more endless drilling looping sounds in my head driving me insane. This isn't just a quality of life feature. This is giving me a new life feature. They've also tweaked some other sounds as well, but tools are the main ones. These aren't all the changes in this update, these are just the main ones. And additionally, there's an absolutely massive amount of bug fixes in this update as well. So if you want to check out all the changes, I've linked the full changelog in the description below this video. And now let's move on to the blocks added in the Prosperity Pack, and additionally, the giveaway for said pack. So, the Space Engineers developers have given me 3 keys for the Prosperity Pack DLC, and there'll be a clue coming up later in the video of how you can enter the giveaway. So make sure to pay good attention to that. To start with, we have the sloped cockpit that you can see here, with there being 2 different variants, and both those variants are available for large grid and small grid. The difference between the variants is what you can see at the back. One variant has doors on the back, and the other variant is open on the back, meaning you can walk straight up into this cockpit if you want, and get straight into the seat. Whereas this one, you have to press F, and then sort of teleport through the doors. This isn't the first open back cockpit we've got in Space Engineers 1, but out of the 2, this is definitely my favourite designed. And this gives me ideas, so many ideas. That said, it is worth mentioning that the open-backed one does not have a conveyor on the bottom, whereas the closed one does. And the same for small grid, you can see that the small grid closed one has conveyor ports on it, but the open variant does not. Next up, we have a cosmetic variant of the hydrogen tank, the bulky hydrogen tank, which you can see has a large grid and a small grid variant. And these are definitely a massive cosmetic improvement over the base hydrogen tanks, as the base one just looks really plain, and it doesn't really fit with the modern art style of Space Engineers, with a lot of the modern blocks being more greebled, and this ultra hydrogen tank just doesn't fit in anymore. And whilst we do have the industrial hydrogen tanks over here, they're kind of niche in their placement, they don't always fit, whereas these new bulky ones are definitely more generic feeling, meaning that you can place them anywhere, but they just look visually much better than the base hydrogen tank. We have a new block called the steep stairs, which there are 6 variants of, which you can see here, a left and a right variant and a central variant, and then the same, but these ones having railings, and as the name would suggest, they are steep stairs. Something you could sort of create with armor panels before, but we didn't have stairs before that went up a full block in a half block space. Although knowing the Space Engineers community, they are 100% going to be using these for anything but stairs and probably greebling all around your ships and bases. Additionally, it's worth mentioning that the central variants are new and we previously did not have central half block stairs before. These aren't the only stairs in this pack though, we also have 8 new solid stairs, with 4 different variants, a left and a right variant, this little quarter block variant you can see here, and then a 1x1 variant, which is identical in dimensions to these short stairs that are a new addition to the base game that I mentioned earlier. And additionally, there are railing variants of all of the stairs as well. So with these being solid stairs, they are airtight, much like the new base game one. And since this pack, we've gone from having 4 stair blocks to nearly 2 whole rows of them. So maybe they should have called this the stair pack rather than the prosperity pack. You've been seeing them all the way through this section already, but we have a new railing block, the square railings, which there are 13 different variants of. And they are pretty much designed to go with all these new stairs they've got, with them having very similar railings to these new square railing blocks, with them even having a central one with a gap in the middle for the new central stair blocks. We have a new cosmetic variant of the battery bank, having a normal version and an offset version, and then additionally a small grid version. And because the large grid battery bank is half the size of a normal battery, its stats are around half that of the normal battery, but the small grid one is about the same size as a normal battery, so its stats are exactly the same as the normal small grid battery. There's 3 new purely cosmetic blocks, which are the server racks you can see here, and as we all know, the best versions of decorative blocks are the ones with interactive elements on them, and because this server rack here has openable doors, this being the server rack B, this is the best one and there is no question about it. No interactive elements, bad server rack. No interactive elements, bad server rack, although, you see these things here? Curious. What could they possibly be? Another block from this pack you've been looking at for most of this section are these new round lights that you can see here, with this being the large grid version, and you can see the small grid version here, which is pretty much visually identical. And then on top of the round lights, there is also a square light, which once again, this is the large grid variant, and then the small grid variant is pretty much identical as well. These are definitely a much needed visual replacement for the interior light, which is another one of these blocks that doesn't really fit in with the modern aesthetic of Space Engineers, whereas these new lights are much more detailed, and additionally I quite like the industrial feeling they have. Right, I'm pretty sure that's it. There's no other blocks in this pack. Let's move on to the giveaway. I'm only joking. Of course I didn't forget about the most important block of all. Cable. 7 brand new, beautiful, amazing cable blocks are in the Prosperity pack, making it definitely worthy of the name Prosperity, as these are the most prosperous blocks in Space Engineers 1. There's 4 main variants of them, the 2x2 one in the middle, and then there's a 1x1 variant, and then there is a covered 1x1 variant as well, but you can still see that the cables are hidden away inside. And then there are these corner variants here that let you step up the cables, or alternatively just to detail the corners of your bases. And additionally, to make up these 7, there are offset versions of the 1x1, 2x2 and covered versions of the cable runs. So obviously, in order to give you the maximum holiest blessing of these cables, we should give away the DLC that they're in. So I'll give you a very simple task. All I need you to do is write the number of times I've said cable in the comment below this video. So for example, if I've said cable 3 times, you would write 3 cables in the comment section below this video. And then a week after this video is released, I'll randomly select 3 comments with the correct number to receive the holy blessing of the Prosperity pack. And for those of you that already have the Prosperity pack, I implore you to take a different strategy, and that is to put random numbers of cables in the comment section below, just so that those dirty cheaters out there can't go to the comment section and just copy what other people have written, because that wouldn't be very holy, that wouldn't be very blessingness. That sounds a little bit like heresy to me, don't you think? Cable. So, the next update after this one, we know that it's going to be Warfare 3, which obviously has big implications. previously, we just thought that it was going to be an update that took the NPCs from the economy stations and gave them guns so they can shoot you. Which, whilst that would have been a massive update and improvement to Space Engineers 1, they have released additional info alongside this prosperity update that makes it sound like this update is going to be even bigger than I first expected. Expect new weapon types, new combat systems, and changes designed to make battles, PvP, and ship-to-ship engagements more dynamic. This time your weapons may not be aimed only at other players. There are new threats on the horizon. Obviously the last part references NPCs, but new weapon types, new combat systems, changes designed to make battles more dynamic. These all sound like there are going to be massive improvements in the next update for Space Engineers, which we know will be coming later this year in November-December time. So if you want to keep up to date with everything coming in this update, and additionally Space Engineers 2's next update, which is the highly anticipated multiplayer update, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel to keep up to date with both Space Engineers 1 and Space Engineers 2. And additionally, if you want to get member exclusive videos and early access to videos, become a YouTube member today with the links in the description below.